All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to work on coding a table in HTML. So I know you guys did this in chapter 8, but I want to go over it. So in our template document, in your body, go ahead and does anybody remember the code for table? What was it? To set up just a generic table. Okay, so correct. So we do the table tag first. So everyone go ahead and type in your table tag. As always, let's go ahead and just close it right away so we don't forget to close it. And when we code a table, we don't code columns, we code rows. So the way you would read a kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, you read it left to right. You don't always read it top to bottom unless you're looking for specific data. You read it left to right. So we always do rows. So to do a row is TR for table row. And just go ahead and add in a comment in there. Table rows. So every time you need to add another row, you need to add another TR to it. Now to make the actual cells, which are the little boxes inside the table, to make a cell, there's two different pieces of code for that. There is TH and there's TD. TD. TH, and it's important to use the right one because when you come to formatting your table in CSS, it makes your life a lot easier. TH is your table header. So we're going to use this and we're going to lay out your schedule for the day. So one table header we might use might be, period. So what class period? These are kind of like your category headers. So they're almost always at the top row. Sometimes you might use them at the bottom, but they're always that top first row. So you know, okay, what is the actual content I'm looking at, the data that's being presented to me. We can make another TH class name or just class. And we'll use this to kind of also build out maybe what kind of homework do you normally get. So TH homework. And take out that TD for me. We're actually going to put it on the next row. So once you get your headers done, make another row. And now we're going to use TDs. I cannot type today. And what TD is, it's a table description. So this is also the content, what goes into each little block. And when you're building your tables in HTML, it's easier to think, okay, I want to build my table row by row. Don't think of what goes in each column because you're just going to start to confuse yourself. Think of what goes in each row. So even if you have to draw it out on a piece of paper to look and see what row it is or put it in Excel so you can see it, do that, because if you try to say, oh, well, let me build column 1 first and then column 2, you're just going to lose track of what's going on. So your first TD lines up with your first TH. These go in the same order. So column 1 is always going to be the first one. If you don't want something in column 1, you're still going to have to code it, but you're going to have to leave it blank. And then code a second TD if you need it to go under column 2. So first TD, we'll go ahead and do first period. All right. Make another row. Does anybody know what their first period class is? It's web design. Now, and you can do homework, you can do teacher name, whatever you want for your third column. But you can put in the homework. And go ahead and save this document once you finish your second row. And open it up. All right, does everyone's table look like this? So by default, there are no lines. If you want lines, you actually have to put in borders on them. Okay? So do me a favor, go ahead and let's do your content first so you make sure you have all your content on your page. Go ahead and build out your class periods 1 through 8 in a table. Go ahead and build those out. So now that you should have your 8 class periods, go back to your CSS, or we'll do it up here. In your head tag, go ahead and create a style. And since we don't have any borders on it, I want our table, let's go ahead and add, we'll go ahead and say border 1 pixel. And you can go ahead and save that and refresh your screen. Hold on 1 second. And while you tell it to give it a size, there's actually a couple different types of borders. There's solid, dashed. It's the same as our divs. So we need to tell it which one we're going to use. So let's use solid. And we'll just give it a color of black. This is shorthand. So instead of you doing, okay, border width, 1 pixel, border style, 1 solid, and border color, black, you can kind of shorthand it, but it does have to be in a specific order. It's usually size, style, and then color. And you just separate them by spaces. So once you get that, you can go back and refresh. Okay, my mistake. Black is 000, white is FFF. This is why a lot of times you just kind of look up whatever color you want, you just look up the hexadecimal. But if you notice, it only put it on the complete outside of it. In order to get each little cell defined, because we just told it for now, all we said was we just wanted the table to have a border. Well, the table is kind of working like a div. You have to put everything inside a table for it to work. If you just try to put a TR or THs, the code's not going to work. You have to make sure it goes inside a table, because otherwise it's just going, why are you giving me this random TR-TH? But you tell it, hey, I'm making a table, now it remembers. So now we can do our TDs and give them, I'm going to go ahead and give them the same border. Except instead of solid, I'm going to do, actually, you know what, I like solid. I always like a solid border. Refresh. Now we have the space in between all of them. And sometimes you may want that, sometimes you may want not. The best way to deal with it is in your table, do a border collapse. Border dash collapse. And tell it to collapse. Which basically means instead of having all that extra space, it kind of just collapses next to itself, so each one sits right on top of the other. And now they no longer have a space in between. They're actually just laying on top of each other. Which is usually, in modern design, typically you collapse your border, because seeing all that extra space in between gets a little confusing sometimes. And here's where a TH comes in handy. This is why I say make sure you have a TH, make sure you have your table head, so that way a lot of times you want to style that differently than the rest. So we can go ahead and do background color, dash color, and let's give it a green. And this way, when you make your table, a lot of times, especially for tables in Excel, you tend to want the header as a different color or a different shade or different font, just so that way it's easier when you're reading it to understand, oh, this is what my categories are, and then below it is the content. So that's why it's important to do a table head. Also, a table head default centers it in the cell. It will center the content in the cell. The rest of them left align. But the headers will always be centered in their cell. So that's really it for tables. Go ahead and play around and design kind of build yourself like your weekly scheduler, your planner, and play around with your CSS and mess with that. So coloring every other row, you would have to do TR because you're trying to target your rows, and then it's nth, child. And then usually do even, odd, and you do your background color. Nth child, so in math, the letter N is kind of replaced as an exponent. So you put N is just kind of a factor of it's there, but to what degree. So it's usually used in patterns, so however many in the pattern. So if you do nth child and then you specify, I want all my even rows. So 2, 4, 6, 8 to be a background color. We'll give it a gray. And then you would have to go in and do an nth child of odd if you want it to be a different color. And now it's every other line. So all your evens. And your TH row counts as number 1. So then it starts at number 2.